Once, in a sprawling city where the lights never dimmed and the streets hummed with constant motion, there lived a girl named Lily. She had come to the city with big dreams, hoping to find herself in the vastness of its skyline and endless possibilities. But somehow, the more she searched for connection, the lonelier she felt. Lily had moved from a small town, where the stars still shone brightly at night, and where every face she passed on the street was familiar. Here, the city felt like an ocean, and she was just a drop. People walked by her without a second glance, wrapped in their own worlds of hurried commutes, buzzing phones, and fleeting conversations. She spent her days working in a small, quiet bookstore tucked between a coffee shop and an old record store. It was a place where time seemed to slow down, but even there, she remained unnoticed. The bookstore had a warmth, a gentle hum of pages turning and soft voices, but the people who came and went never seemed to linger. It was as though the city itself demanded that no one truly stop, that they keep moving, chasing something just out of reach. At night, the lights from the high-rise buildings cast long shadows over the city, and Lily would walk home alone. The streets were crowded, but she felt like an invisible figure in the crowd. No one saw her. No one spoke to her. In a city of millions, it seemed like she didn't exist at all. But Lily had a secret. Every evening, she would stop at a small park near her apartment, where a large willow tree stood, its branches sweeping the ground like the fingers of an old friend. She would sit there in silence, listening to the rustling leaves, feeling the cool breeze against her skin, and for the first time that day, she felt like she wasn't alone. One evening, as the sky shifted from gold to purple, she noticed someone else in the park, a young man sitting at the base of the willow tree, sketching in a notebook. He didn't seem to notice her at first, lost in his art. But Lily, curious, watched him quietly for a while, captivated by how peacefully he seemed to be in his own world. After some time, their eyes met. The young man smiled, a warm, gentle smile, and nodded toward the empty space beside him. Lily hesitated but then walked over, sitting down slowly, as if unsure she belonged there. "I come here every night," he said softly, not looking at her but back at his notebook. "The willow tree is a good listener." Lily nodded, unsure of what to say. For a long while, they sat together in comfortable silence. She wasn't sure why, but she felt seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The city, which had always felt so cold and vast, seemed to shrink around her. She wasn't alone, not anymore. Night after night, Lily found herself returning to that same spot. Sometimes, the young man would be there, sometimes not, but it didn't matter. She had found her place, a quiet corner of the city where she could breathe. And slowly, the loneliness that had followed her began to fade, replaced by the realization that perhaps the connections she sought didn't have to be grand or life-changing to matter. Sometimes, all it took was one person, one shared moment of quiet understanding, to remind her that she wasn't invisible after all. The city may have been enormous, but Lily learned that even in its vastness, there were spaces where she could be herself. And in those spaces, she would always find something that felt like home.